Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is how daily I bring you a different people engagement tool, performance enhancement tool, possibility exploration tool. I call them PETs. Today, the one I've got for you is something called a route map. It's a sort of an aggregate of lots of these different PETs, and it's really focused on this thing which will have happened to you. Sometimes you need to get somebody to open up and tell you a little bit more information, or you need to dig and find out what's really going on, or you need to be able to get people to come up with the answers themselves. And people will say to you things like, especially if you've got one of those, active listening courses, they'll say it's all about open questions. And it might well all be about open questions, but we're Pentacle, we're on Cube, and we've got a few more pets up our sleeve, tricks up our sleeve, which we can share with you for different situations. So let's jump onto Cube and let's have a look at QueezMe. So QueezMe. So here we are on Cube, where the sun, as you know, is always shining. This is my other avatar over there. So let's get a bit closer in and see what we can find. So with this particular pet, I want to start with a very simple idea. And the idea is this one here. You need to get into a locked safe and then persuade people to take away all the valuables, for example. So the way you do it is you don't just use one key. You use skeleton keys. You use lots of different keys, methods to get in. So these are some of the classic methods to get in, which we have on Cube from the Pentacle PETs library. So the first one is something called RatHoling. RatHoling is how you get to the bottom of things fast. You start with a simple closed question, then you do a reflect statement. Basically, you just repeat the last few words back to them. This is a technique which is used by lots of people. Chris Voss has made it quite popular, but when I started using it, no one knew it. So it's really powerful. Now people look out for it. Then you look for a hook. Use the hook to ask a probing question. Tell me more. That one came from some work which I did with Colin Williams years ago. And then you use the probing question to move deeper. You just basically use another reflect statement, or you just wait. Most people will fill in the space. They don't like having quiet spaces or quiet periods in a conversation. And then you keep going down, and that will bring you to basically a wrap-up clincher question. And that's how you dig deep to get to the bottom of things fast. Sometimes the question is to help people understand whether they're actually going the right way. So you want to use the questions to guide them. This is the 5-hop model from the rabbit innovation technique. Rabbit innovation basically is the method which I developed, which basically says, to get through to one useful innovation, you probably need 100,000 of them, unless you figure out how to do it right. And this is how you help people to realize whether their ideas are going to make it or not. You ask them a number of questions. How does it look to you? Is it real? Does it fit? Is it useful for the customer point of view? So those are very structured questions. They're not open at all. And then the other one is coach. When you want somebody to learn and you want them to take ownership, then you've got to let them learn in their own head. So the method is relatively straightforward. You let them do something, and then you check out what happened. So you say to them, so what happened? And you shut up. Don't tell them what you saw, and let them talk about it. And then you move on to ask a question, not so you understand it, but to force them to think, so why do you think that happened? And then you might challenge them. So what might you do differently next time? Now they're having to think about doing things differently, very specific questions. And then if they're really stuck, you might offer them help and then go around the loop again. So that's coach. That's another way of using questions effectively. SocRatiq is a really useful way if you're writing a document, or if you have to make a presentation and you have a number of people and you want to try and make sure that they're all moving through the same thought process. Use SocRatiq. You start by brainstorming a whole host of different questions. And brainstorm all the questions. Let's say you got, let's say you got 4 or 5 questions, okay? And then you say, okay, well, are these really worrying to the people? And are they going to generate lots of anxiety? And if you're on Cube, then you'll be able to see that I'm going to. What's happened? There we go. So so having generated some questions, then what you'll see is that you want to move them across. So you say this question: is it going to solve the problem of them being really worried? And okay, great, it goes here because I'm going to deal with it early, because it's something which I'm going to have to deal with early on. This one is. I don't know which one should we do. Any of them. So basically, you take the questions you've got and you position them as where they're going to be used early or late in your message, and whether it's factual or emotional. You always start by killing off all the emotional stuff first, and then you work your way through the factual stuff, and then you work your way up into the less worrying stuff and finish off with the last facts. So that's another way of using questions. And then, of course, there's the the ever powerful IDQB, which is basically this is the nuclear option. So if you want people to really absorb, learn, and move forward, this is how you get turkeys to vote for an early Christmas. So this is the method where you have a look at the pet in detail, but basically you help them to understand the issue, provide data, ask the question, shut up, and then you can build a solution together. So when we're thinking about using questions and quizzing people and so on Cube with the Pentacle tools, there are different ways depending on what you're trying to do. So that's really what I wanted to share with you today. Subscribe if you haven't. Read the newsletter every week. And I guess I'll see you again.